The Common Core was introduced after George Bush was voted out, or rather, he finished his term, and Obama came to power. And there was still the clamoring by the education reformers, and so the Common Core was sort of supposed to be a better version of the NCLB, but really, what it turned out was like a bigger fiasco. We certainly need evaluation and we need assessment, but the Common Core is not the way to go for several reasons. One thing is that, one of the reasons why conservatives have been sort of opposed to the Common Core as well, so you have the progressives who are opposed, but conservatives also, is because it introduces national standards at every school level. So even though they don't call it national standards, they have this Bill Gates funded institution that sort of provides the basic framework for all schools, and how they make schools follow is by introducing the race to the top at the state level. So Obama has this funding called Race to the Top, and if states want to get that money, they have to adopt the Common Core.
My name is Kathleen Gare. I'm the director of the dual diploma program at SUNY New Paltz, and I'm also a lecturer in the psychology department. I am the parent of 2 children in the New Paltz School District, a daughter in 9th grade and a son in 6th grade. I think, however they're taught, it should be informed by educators, that people who are trained in teaching, who have degrees in that area, are the ones who should be making the curriculum, and teachers who are in the classroom who have the first-hand experience about what works, what kids at certain ages are able to achieve. Again, I think it's setting the bar high is good, trying to get kids to achieve higher standards, but I think that it's kind of been pushed through without a lot of oversight from people in the actual field of education, is my sense of it. So I think it needs more oversight, more review, and I think it needed more time in order to really implement it in an effective way.
My name is Ian Belfato. I'm an English major in my senior year, and I was an education major. When I first declared my major as education, I wanted to help my students, but after learning about the Common Core, I realized that it's not really about helping students as much as it is getting the students to pass the tests that New York State develops. I thought if I was a teacher, I could make lessons engaging and fun for students, but because of these standards, that's really not the case. And the more I realized that with observations in high schools, I kind of decided that that's really not for me. There's a system called the Lexile score, which ranks books based on difficulty. And right now with the Common Core, a book like Grapes of Wrath is considered acceptable for 5th and 6th grade students, which is absolutely ridiculous.
The number of students in the School of Education has dropped dramatically over the last 4 years. We used to be the school with the most numbers of students, and now, we are sort of below all of the other schools in terms of our growth. And I think part of the reason is the Common Core and all that testing, and students are afraid of going into teaching with all these tests that they have to shoulder. They're afraid that they're not going to get tenure. There are all these things aligned against them. The other thing that distinguishes between, which nobody is willing to talk about, which is like the big elephant in the room, is inequality in the US and the extent of poverty in the US. You cannot have students coming out of very poor neighborhoods and then throw these tests at them and hope that they do well. It's like measuring a baby's weight when you don't give the baby food and hoping the measurement will make the baby feel better. That's not gonna happen. I think we need to struggle against having these standardized tests in the first place. What are they for? We say we are a meritocracy, but it really, I think it disadvantages children from certain backgrounds over others, and I think that it doesn't necessarily reflect what the person knows. So I think as parents and as advocates, we ought to be challenging the role of standardized tests in our schools,
If anything, the schools that are doing the worst should get the most money, because those are the schools that are most in need, and the teachers who are working at those districts should be commended for taking on the challenges of working in a district that doesn't have the support, or that kids are struggling and coming from challenging backgrounds. So I think those schools who tend to be the failing schools, those teachers should get more credit, and those schools need to get more money. It really comes down to the funding, at least in the state level. The federal level, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but at the state level, they just keep taking more and more funding away from the schools. So you're doing they're setting more standards, but giving us less money. And between, I think New Paltz right now, the district has less money from the state than it had in 2008. So even though Cuomo made a big deal that extra money was coming into the budget, it was up from last year, but it's still lower than it was in 2008. And I think 50 teachers have been cut in that time period.
I think that we should set standards for ourselves, but I think we should be the ones setting the standards, not the state. The Common Core was written by politicians, not by teachers, so they really don't know what it's like to be teaching. I think we should have freedom to teach what books we want, what lessons we want. I think students will still get the same education, but right now I just don't see that changing anytime soon.
Stephanie Santangada, a high school English teacher, wrote this little essay and dedicated it to Governor Andrew Cuomo. There is a man in Albany who, I surmise by his clamorous paroxysms, has an extreme aversion to educators. He sees teachers as curs or likens them to mangy dogs. Methinks he suffers from a rare form of psychopathology in which he absconds with our dignity by exacting laws counterintuitive to the orthodoxy of educational leadership. We have given him sufferance for far too long. He is currently taking a circuitous path to DC, but he will no doubt soon find himself in litigious waters. The time has come to bowdlerize his posits, send him many furlongs away, and maroon him there. Maybe Cuba, she added. I'm not supposed to say this, but all these insanely hard words appeared on the 4th, 6th, and 8th grade tests last week. That is really funny and so true. I mean, not just that these vocabulary words are hard, but there have been questions that have been completely wrong. You know, the answers have been wrong, or, you know, they don't make any sense. So how can you, I mean, imagine a student trying to do this test and walking away feeling like a failure because they can't do this. So, yeah, I mean, what are we educating our kids for? And I think that's exactly, you know, the point that this letter makes. You know, why are we educating our kids to say these words or to remember? You know, who's going to remember all these once we, you know, graduate? I always think about what did I learn in high school and what have I kept with me? And there's so little that we have kept with us, even in our, you know, even with all those lack of standardized tests, you know. And I think a lot of what they do here, students are going to forget the minute they walk out of the school doors. It's a way to pass a test, and that's it. It doesn't make any sense. You know, I think teachers are the best evaluators of their own students' learnings. They do that day in and day out by asking questions and, you know, understanding what the students' levels are. And so I think we need a more inclusive sort of assessment that takes into account students' backgrounds, their level of learning, you know, their own life experiences, the cultural context that they come from, all of which is missing from the Common Core. Students are fed up, teachers are fed up, and parents are fed up.